Before sunrise, the town of Eden sleeps. The bay lies black and still, boats pulled high on the sand, houses quiet along the shore. Only the tide moves. Then, beyond the headland, something enormous breaks the surface. A 6-ton killer whale, fully visible in the open water. He turns toward shore and begins hitting the water. Again, again, and again, the sound rolling across Twofold Bay like a warning bell. Inside a small house near the water, George Davidson wakes to a sound his father knew and his grandfather before him. For 70 years, it has meant one thing: Old Tom has come. George pulls on his boots and steps into the dark. The whale breaches again, black and white, massive, deliberate. Most people this close to something that size would feel fear. George Davidson smiles, because to him, Old Tom is familiar, known, an old presence arriving exactly on time, come to tell him something. Somewhere beyond the mouth of the bay, the orcas have found a whale. But this story is about something else, the deal they came to collect. A deal older than George Davidson, older than his family, older than any European map of this coast. George turns toward the sleeping shoreline and shouts the call that has echoed across Twofold Bay for generations. Rush! Oh! The men run for the boats. Out in the bay, Old Tom waits. He has done his part. Now the humans must do theirs. The first Europeans who saw killer whales in Twofold Bay thought they knew exactly what they were looking at. Predators, danger, something to kill. But the people who had lived there long before them saw something else entirely. The Thawa people of the Yuin nation had lived around Twofold Bay for tens of thousands of years before European ships arrived. They knew the headlands, the tides, the migration seasons, and they knew the orcas, calling them Beowas, understood as far greater than animals. To the Thawa, the orcas of Twofold Bay were family. Their old people told a story that ran deeper than legend. When great hunters and leaders died at sea, their spirits returned to the bay as killer whales, still hunting, still watching, still connected to the water they had always known. Imagine hearing that for the first time and it landing as truth. A human being dies at sea, a killer whale returns in the bay. The people call, the orca answers. For generations beyond written memory, that relationship was spiritual and practical both, woven into daily life. The Thawa called to the orcas by slapping the water, sang to them, made offerings, and the orcas drove fish toward the shallows, where the people could spear them from shore. One Yuin elder, Percy Mumbula, later described this relationship to researcher Danielle Claude as stretching back to before the last ice age, when land now beneath the sea was still dry ground. 12,000 years ago, maybe more. Older than the pyramids, older than Stonehenge. So when European whalers arrived in the early 1800s and saw killer whales in the bay, the Thawa offered them something stranger than fear. Listen to them. They are partners. They have always been partners. Before sunrise, the town of Eden sleeps. The bay lies black and still, boats pulled high on. Few people would have listened. When settlers arrived somewhere unfamiliar, among unfamiliar animals and people whose knowledge they often dismissed, the usual pattern followed a familiar shape: control, extraction, fear. But in 1857, a Scottish-born whaler named Alexander Davidson established a whaling station at Keir Inlet, and the Davidson family did something that changed the course of this story. They listened, imperfectly, practically, whalers in a whaling world, but closely enough to notice that the Tower crew members on their boats carried knowledge of their own. The killer whales arrived with purpose, working the bay, knowing when the migrating whales were coming, how to drive them, how to hold them, And, most astonishing of all, how to call the humans. A killer whale would break from the hunt and swim toward the station, breach near shore, slap the water with its tail again and again, until the men came running. The whalers gave this behavior a name, the tell. Old Tom was telling them, and the message was clear. Because a wild killer whale was doing something far stranger than hunting near humans. He was calling them into the hunt, and once the boats launched, he would turn and lead them back, swimming ahead of the green rowboats to where the rest of the pod had already surrounded the whale. Think about the leap that requires, and whose leap it truly is, the orcas. Old Tom had to know where the humans were, what sound would bring them, that they would follow. And the humans had to know something just as important. When Old Tom came, they had to answer. This was real, a genuine working relationship, and every working relationship has rules. The rule was simple. The orcas ate first. The whalers called it the law of the tongue, and once you understand it, the entire story changes. Every winter, humpback and southern right whales migrated along the Australian coast, and Twofold Bay sat directly in their path, a deep, natural harbour where migrating whales could be driven, trapped, and held. The orcas had built a hunting strategy around it for generations. One group worked offshore, intercepting whales before they passed the bay. Another began the drive. A third held the mouth of the bay, sealing the escape route. Coordination, precise and practiced. Then Old Tom came to shore. The tell, the breach, the sound that woke the town. Rush, oh! The boats launched, Old Tom led, and when the men reached the whale, the orcas helped hold it, blocking its escape, keeping it near the surface. Some accounts describe orcas grabbing the harpoon rope in their teeth and towing the boats closer. Then the whale was killed. That is the uncomfortable truth inside this story. Bloody, brutal, a practice history has since left behind. But the deeper truth is stranger than the brutality, because both species were hunting whales anyway. What happened in Twofold Bay was that two predators from two completely different worlds found a way to divide the outcome. The orcas wanted the tongue, the lips, the soft tissue. The humans wanted the blubber, the oil, the bone. Each side valued something different, so the deal held. After the kill, the Davidsons secured the carcass and left it for the orcas. For 24 to 48 hours, Old Tom and the pod took their share. Only after that did the whalers return for theirs. Inside a world built on taking, this relationship survived because of restraint on both sides. A trust repeated so many times it became tradition, and tradition, lived long enough, starts to feel like law. There were many killer whales in Twofold Bay, at least 26 known by name, recognized by the shape of their fins, their markings, their behavior. Some carried the names of Aboriginal crew members who had died, honoring the Tower belief that old people returned as orcas. Cooper, Charlie Adjury. Others, Hooky with the bent fin, Stranger, Taipei, Big Ben, Sharky. Familiar animals, known individually, seen, remembered. But Old Tom became the most famous of all. Roughly 22 feet long, 6 tons, a dorsal fin the whalers recognized the moment it broke the surface. By the early 1900s, he was known far beyond Eden. Newspapers wrote about him by name. Visitors came hoping to see him. The killers of Eden were passing into legend, while the people who knew them were still alive. His fame came from something other than size. He was famous because he came. He was the teller, the one who broke from the hunt and called the men from shore, standing at the edge between two worlds, close enough to be recognized, wild enough to remain entirely himself. Old Tom lived wild and free, shaped by the open ocean rather than any human hand. He could leave whenever he wanted, hunt entirely alone, vanish into the Pacific, and never be seen again. Instead, for decades, he returned, season after season, generation after generation. The Davidsons aged, the sons became fathers, the fathers became grandfathers, and still old Tom came. Which means this ran deeper than behavior. It was memory, passed down, and modern science gives us a word for that: culture. A calf earns its place as an Eden killer through seasons of watching and learning, taught when to drive, when to hold, when to call, when to wait. The law of the tongue was carried in minds, in matriarchs, in memory. And for decades, old Tom was the living face of that memory, until the day he came to collect and found the answer had changed. We have to ask the question that makes this story impossible to shake. What did old Tom understand? Not simply what he did, we already know that. Did he understand the relationship, the deal, when it was honored and when it was broken? For most of human history, people answered questions like that by drawing a hard line between instinct and thought. But orcas have spent decades making that line harder to draw. An orca brain can weigh up to 15 pounds, several times heavier than a human brain built for social complexity. Orcas live in matrilineal pods led by older females with dialects, learned calls passed down through generations. They remember, they teach, they grieve. Female orcas go through menopause, one of the rarest traits in the animal kingdom, living decades past their reproductive years because what they know can help the family survive. A grandmother in an orca pod is a library, and when a library dies, knowledge can disappear. Put that mind into old Tom, that culture into the Eden killers, a pod that may have carried its relationship with human beings for thousands of years through the Thawer and nearly 100 more through the Davidsons. Science may leave the question open, but the Bay gives us a harder answer. He came to the same shore, led them to the same hunt, waited for the same share. And when the rule was broken, he fought for it, deliberately, as if something had been taken that he knew was his. The relationship broke slowly, one small fracture at a time. Before the final rupture, there were warnings. In 1901, one of the Eden orcas, Typee, became stranded near shore while chasing prey. Before the Davidson crew could reach him, a local man named Harry Silks killed him. The pod left Twofold Bay early that season. Only a handful returned the next year. Imagine that. The pod simply left. The absence said enough. The message arrived whole and clear, carried entirely in silence. Trust had been damaged. Other moments followed. Outside whaling crews sometimes came into Eden, men who arrived ignorant of the law of the tongue and indifferent to it besides. They saw a whale, they saw profit, and they tried to take what the orcas had worked to bring in. When that happened, the killers stopped telling. The orcas withheld the call, and the season could fail. Again and again, the message was the same. The relationship only worked if the rule was honored. Show up, take your part, leave the rest. For generations, the Davidsons understood this. Whalers, practical and rough, but they knew the difference between a catch and a covenant. Then came 1923, and a man who saw only the catch. George Davidson seemed like the last man who would break it. He was the grandson of Alexander Davidson, the man who had listened. He had grown up with the law of the tongue. He knew old Tom. He knew the rule. But one morning in 1923, George went out on the water with a neighbor named John Logan, a man who came from outside it entirely, new to the bay's old rhythm, a stranger to the sound of old Tom in the dark. To him, a whale was a whale, a carcass was a carcass, a storm was coming, and a decision had to be made. That day, Old Tom did what he had always done. He found a whale, told the shore, led the boat. The whale was secured. The law of the tongue should have followed, the carcass anchored, Old Tom and the pod given their share. But Logan looked at the weather and saw risk. If they left the whale overnight, a storm might take it, the oil, the blubber, the value gone. So Logan pushed to haul the whale in now, before the orcas fed, before the law was honored, before the deal was complete. George Davidson knew. He had to know. Every year of his life had taught him what came next. But Logan insisted, and the men began towing the carcass toward shore. Out in the water, Old Tom moved in. He stayed. He closed the distance. He grabbed the harpoon rope in his teeth and pulled. The rope tore through his mouth. Several teeth ripped from the right side of his upper jaw. Old Tom let go. In the boat, John Logan understood what he had done. According to accounts, he said, "Oh God, what have I done?" He knew, maybe only then, but then fully. Orca teeth, once lost, are lost for good. The wound remained. The gap remained. And in that moment, something older than George Davidson's family broke. One outsider, one decision, one afternoon on the water. 100 years of trust, broken in the time it takes to haul a rope. After the rope incident, Old Tom was never the same. Some accounts say the sockets became infected, others that the injury affected his ability to feed. What can be known for certain is simpler. The teeth were gone, the wound was real, and the relationship had changed. Old Tom continued to be seen in the years that followed, but the old world was fading. Whaling itself was fading. The industry that had once filled harbors and lit cities with whale oil losing its place. Then, on September 17, 1930, Old Tom's body was found floating in Twofold Bay. A whale received an obituary, honored with the words usually saved for a person. George Davidson and his son Wallace spent months preparing Old Tom's skeleton. Today it stands in the Eden Killer Whale Museum, 6.7 meters long. And if you stand beside him and look closely at the right side of his upper jaw, you can still see the gap. That is the image this story leaves behind, above the boats, above the harpoons, above the old station. The gap, the physical mark of a broken deal. After Old Tom died, the orcas stopped coming. The tell stopped. The tail slaps stopped. The green boats searched the dark alone. The bay went quiet, and it has stayed quiet. Some believe the remaining Eden killers were killed by whalers farther up the coast, strangers to the old arrangement, free of any reason to honor it. Others believe Old Tom was the last keeper of the tradition, and that the knowledge died with him. Much of it stays uncertain, but we know this. For generations, the orcas came. After Old Tom, quietly deafening, gone. For almost a century, Old Tom's bones stood in Eden. People came to see him, heard the story. The killer whale who worked with humans, the law of the tongue, the deal that lasted 100 years, the deal that broke. Then, in 2023, scientists returned to Old Tom's bones with a different question. Beyond what he did, beyond how he died, where did he come from? They extracted DNA from his preserved remains and compared it against known killer whale populations around the world, looking for descendants, some living genetic echo of the killers of Eden. What they found made the story stranger still. They found the trail end there. The Eden killers appeared to have been a distinct local lineage, one that may exist now only in memory. Old Tom may have been the last visible trace of something local, specific, and gone. Now go back to the beginning. Before the whaling station, before the green boats, before the Europeans had a name for the bay. Go back to the Thawa people, calling the orcas Beowas. Family. Ancestors returned from the sea. Science speaks in data, in measurement, in test and proof. Belief speaks in something else entirely, built for a different kind of truth. But sometimes, science finds something that makes an old story feel truer. A pod whose line seems to end at the water's edge, a relationship remembered for thousands of years by the people who knew them first, and one skeleton standing in a museum with a gap in its jaw where the deal was broken. Maybe the oldest stories exist for a different purpose than explanation, to keep us from forgetting what matters, that some beings deserve more than use, that some relationships exist beyond ownership, that taking more than your share can end things beyond your power to rebuild. Old Tom's bones leave the legend standing, unproven and undiminished. But they echo it, and sometimes an echo is enough to make the whole bay feel haunted.